On an autumn afternoon in Boston, as orange-tinted leaves danced to the ground, Abigail Carter gazed out the library window. She had worked as a librarian at this local library for 15 years, finding her place in the quiet world of books. With her long brown hair tied back, her face showed both intelligence and kindness. "Abigail, have you finished organizing the new history section?" her colleague, Emily, asked quietly. "Almost done. I'll finish it tomorrow morning," Abigail smiled in response. Abigail's parents, Henry and Clara, ran a small real estate company in the Boston suburbs. Henry was a well-known figure in the local real estate industry. Clara was a sociable woman who frequently appeared at local charity events. Among their two daughters, the one they always boasted about was their younger daughter, Sophia. Sophia worked as a manager at an upscale boutique on Newbury Street. She was glamorous, sociable, and ambitious. With her appearance that seemed to have stepped out of a fashion magazine and her connections in society, she was constantly praised by her parents. "Abigail, you haven't forgotten about dinner tonight, have you?" Abigail held her breath at Clara's phone call. "Tonight was a family dinner." "Yes, I remember, Mother. I'll be there at 7. Sophia is bringing wonderful news." "That girl is truly shining," Clara's voice was filled with pride. "Do you have anything new going on?" "Nothing special," Abigail answered quietly. In truth, she did have big news, but it wasn't the right time to share it yet. The Carter family dinner, as usual, revolved around Sophia. She continued to talk about the latest gossip in Boston's social circles and her success stories at the boutique. Her parents gasped in admiration at her every word, as if her words were enchanted. "Now for my news." Sophia paused deliberately before her cheesecake dessert. "I've started dating James Bennett." "James Bennett from Marita's Pharmaceuticals?" Henry's eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, he's the sales director. Yesterday, he took me to an ultra-luxurious restaurant," Sophia said triumphantly. "That's wonderful. His father is a member of the golf club, isn't he?" Clara was excited. After dinner, as Abigail was clearing the dishes, Clara approached her. "Abigail, you need to find someone nice soon. You're already 36. "Time is running out, Mother," Abigail cut off her words. Then, gathering courage, she said, "Actually, I'm engaged." Clara's hands stopped washing the dishes. "What?" "To whom?" "Thomas Reed. I met him at the library." A complex expression appeared on Clara's face. "Well, when can we meet him?" 2 weeks later, Abigail brought Thomas to her parents' house. Thomas Reed was a tall man with an intellectual air. He greeted her parents with a modest demeanor and answered their questions politely. However, his simple suit and humble manner clearly didn't make a strong impression on her parents. "So, Mr. Reed, what do you do for a living?" Henry asked. "I work as an editor at a publishing house," Thomas answered quietly. After dinner, Sophia pulled Abigail aside. "Hey, isn't Thomas a bit plain? Can he really make you happy?" Abigail smiled. "We love each other. That's what matters." "Well, I suppose at your age, that's the best you can do," Sophia shrugged. 6 months later, news arrived that Sophia was engaged to James Bennett. Her parents were overjoyed and threw a grand engagement party at a luxury hotel. Abigail and Thomas's engagement was overshadowed by Sophia's glittering news. "Abigail, why isn't Thomas more involved in the wedding preparations?" Clara asked one day. "James goes with Sophia every weekend to look at venues. He's busy," Abigail answered. In reality, Thomas wasn't very enthusiastic about wedding preparations, often citing work commitments. However, when they were alone, Thomas was like a completely different person. He was warm, thoughtful, and gradually showing Abigail his true self. "Trust me," he often said. "Everything will work out." Abigail believed him. She was preparing for a modest but heartfelt wedding. Regardless of her family's reaction, she was determined to follow her chosen path. 2 weeks before the wedding, Abigail visited a small church in the Boston suburbs. The white chapel glowed peacefully in the morning light. It wasn't a fancy venue, but it was a special place for Abigail and Thomas. It was here that they had their first serious conversation and confirmed their feelings for each other. "Miss Carter, here's the final schedule for the day." The church coordinator handed her some documents. "Music, flower arrangements, everything is confirmed." Abigail smiled as she reviewed the documents. It was a small wedding, but planned with attention to every detail. The flower arrangements were specially ordered from a local florist, and the cake was being made by a former pastry chef from the nursing home where she volunteered. "Thank you. It's perfect," Abigail replied to the coordinator when her phone started ringing in her bag. Looking at the screen, she saw it was a call from Sophia. "Hello, Abigail? Come home right now? I have important news." Sophia's voice had its usual excitement. "I'm at the venue for a final check. I'll come later." "No, right now. Mom and Dad are waiting too." Abigail sighed deeply. Sophia always prioritized her own convenience. "All right. I'll be there within an hour." When she arrived at her parents' house, Sophia and her parents were waiting in the living room. An expensive champagne had been opened and poured into glasses on the table. Sophia's face showed obvious joy and a scheming expression. "What's the news?" Abigail asked, and Sophia stood up, holding James's arm. "We've set the date for our wedding," Sophia said in an excited voice. "We've booked the wonderful Grand Hotel. With James's father's connections, we got special permission, even though there was a waiting list." "That's great," Abigail said. "When is it?" Sophia grinned. "May 15th. Starting at 2 p.m. Abigail's body froze. May 15th at 2 p.m. It was exactly the same day and time as her wedding with Thomas. "But that's the day of my wedding. I've already sent out the invitations," Abigail said quietly. "I know," Sophia shrugged as if she meant no harm. "But this is a special opportunity, the Grand Hotel. It's nothing compared to your little church." As Abigail was at a loss for words, Henry cleared his throat. "Abigail, you should postpone your ceremony. You're the older sister, so you should give way." "But, Dad, I've already made all the reservations, sent out invitations." Abigail's voice trembled. "Your wedding isn't going to be anything special anyway," Henry coldly declared. "Important executives from James's company will be coming to Sophia's wedding. It's a big opportunity for our real estate business." Clara also set her glass on the table. "Abigail, please understand. Sophia's wedding will be a major event in society. You and Thomas, well, something more modest suits you better." Anger welled up in Abigail's heart, but she didn't show it on her face. As she remained silent, Sophia added even more pressure. "Your shabby dress, your cheap venue, it would be better for everyone if you canceled," she said condescendingly. "Come on, Thomas is just a regular employee at a publishing house, right? James is an executive at a major pharmaceutical company. The future prospects are different." "Yes, and James's parents are such respectable people," Clara chimed in. "His father is even the president of the golf club. Many guests will attend. Your small ceremony should give way to theirs." Abigail quietly looked at her parents and Sophia. Her heart was filled with anger and sadness, but she didn't express it. "I understand," was all she said as she stood up. "Really, Abigail is so understanding after all," Sophia rejoiced. "You'll call to cancel right away, won't you?" Abigail didn't answer but took her bag and quietly left the house. As she closed the front door, she heard Sophia's triumphant laughter and her mother's words. "My clever daughter." Once in her car, Abigail's phone rang. It was from Thomas. "How did it go?" His quiet voice calmed Abigail. "Terrible." Abigail briefly explained the situation. "Come to my place," Thomas said. "Let's talk." Thomas's apartment was modest but orderly. He made Abigail tea and quietly listened to her story. "Sophia is trying to have her wedding on the same day as mine. My parents are telling me to give way." Abigail's voice choked. Thomas took her hand. "What do you want?" "Really? I want to have the wedding as planned," Abigail answered without hesitation. "I don't want our special day ruined by their selfishness." Thomas's lips softened into a gentle smile. Then that's what we'll do. We'll have the wedding as planned. But my family, it doesn't matter if your family doesn't come, Thomas said quietly. We have our own important people. Abigail looked into Thomas's eyes. There was unwavering trust and love. She took a deep breath and made her decision. Let's proceed as planned, she said. Thomas gently embraced her. Don't worry, everything will work out. Abigail nodded in his arms. She had no intention of giving up her life just because her family told her to. On the wedding day, the morning in Boston was clear. Abigail was preparing for the ceremony in the small church's bridal room. Thomas's cousin, Rachel, was helping with the final touches to her hairstyle. You're truly beautiful, Abigail. Rachel placed her hand on her shoulder. Thomas is a lucky man. Abigail smiled, but complicated feelings swirled inside her. There had been no contact from her parents, since they strongly urged her to postpone the wedding. She had called several times but was met with cold responses. Contact with Sophia had also ceased. It's sad that your family isn't coming, Rachel said gently. But I'm really happy that you and other friends are here, Abigail answered honestly. What matters is having people who sincerely bless the beginning of my new life. Looking out the window, she saw cars beginning to arrive in the church parking lot one after another. Abigail was a bit surprised. Her wedding with Thomas was supposed to be small scale. They had only invited close friends, colleagues, and Thomas's family. Altogether, there shouldn't have been even 50 people. There seemed to be quite a lot of people, Abigail said, and Rachel approached the window. Oh my, aren't those luxury cars? Rachel exclaimed. In the church parking lot, Mercedes, BMWs, and even several Rolls-Royces were lined up. Men in suits were getting out one after another and heading to the church. What's happening? This is my wedding, right? At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and Thomas's best friend, Daniel, poked his head in. Abigail, the guest list has grown a bit, he said with a smile. Thomas mentioned a few extra guests. A few? Abigail's eyes widened. Who are they? Boston's business leaders. And the person getting out of that black limousine, I think that might be the governor. Daniel shrugged. The governor? Abigail's voice rose. What is Thomas? Just then, a short message arrived from Thomas. Don't worry. Everything will work out. I love you. Abigail continued with her wedding preparations, puzzled by this strange situation. Her simple yet elegant wedding dress enhanced her delicate beauty. The pearl necklace that Thomas's mother had given her softly glowed around her neck. As the start time of the ceremony approached, and Abigail was making her final preparations, the door suddenly burst open. There stood her parents, looking distraught, and Sophia, who had been crying. Abigail! Clara rushed toward her. Why didn't you cancel the ceremony? Abigail looked calmly at her mother. I told you we would proceed as planned. But Sophia's ceremony, Henry began. I don't care, Sophia interrupted. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her makeup was smeared. Hurry, James's parents and all his relatives are angry. Abigail was confused. What do you mean? At that moment, the door opened again, and Thomas entered. Abigail was a bit surprised. It was said to be bad luck for the groom to see the bride before the wedding, but seeing Thomas, she gasped. He was dressed in a high-end tailored tuxedo, looking as if he had stepped out of a magazine. What's going on, Thomas? Abigail asked, and Thomas took her hand. It seems that Sophia and James's wedding venue was suddenly canceled, Thomas said calmly. Apparently, all of James's relatives have gathered, but they have no venue. Why? Abigail asked, and Sophia stumbled over her words. Well, they hadn't actually made a reservation, Clara answered instead. Weariness mixed in her voice. Sophia and James thought you would cancel your ceremony. Abigail was too shocked to speak. The plan to ruin her special day had come back to haunt them in this way. Abigail, please, Henry pleaded. Let Sophia have the venue. James's relatives are all important people. His father is furious. We can't embarrass them. The future of the company is at stake. If we give those people a bad impression, our real estate company is finished, Clara added. Abigail looked at her parents' who had always prioritized Sophia and trampled on her feelings. They were now facing the consequences of their actions. "Please, Abigail," Sophia said, crying. "Help me!" James is angry. He's saying he'll break off the engagement. Abigail took a deep breath. Anger and sadness welled up, but she suppressed them. "You told me to cancel my ceremony," she said quietly, but with a resolute attitude. "But I decided to live my own life. I'm sorry, but the ceremony is about to begin." "But, Abigail..." As Clara began to plead, Thomas stepped forward. "This is our special day," Thomas said firmly. "Mrs. Carter, Mr. Carter, if you would like to attend your daughter's wedding, we certainly welcome you as guests. However, we cannot allow this ceremony to be interrupted." There was a dignity in Thomas's voice that Abigail had never heard before. Her parents wore surprised expressions, and Sophia broke down in tears. "I hate you," Sophia shouted. "You've ruined my life." Thomas placed his hand on Abigail's shoulder and said, "It's our special day. Let's proceed as planned," and began to lead her to the ceremony. At that moment, noisy voices could be heard from outside the church. Looking through the window, they saw a middle-aged gentleman who had gotten out of a luxury car, shouting at a young man who appeared to be James. It was clearly James's father. "What is going on? No venue? What do you take my friends for?" James was trembling as he made excuses. "Dad, calm down. We're looking for another venue. Don't make me laugh. How will you clear this shame?" Abigail moved away from the window and looked at Thomas. His eyes held a determination she hadn't seen before. "Thomas, what's happening?" Abigail asked, and Thomas smiled gently. "There's no time to explain everything, but I can tell you one thing." He gripped her hand firmly. "I will protect you, and today everything will be revealed." Abigail was confused, but her trust in Thomas was unwavering. She nodded and adjusted her wedding veil. "Let's go," she said. "Let's start our wedding." Thomas opened the door and led her into the hallway. As the church organ began to play the majestic wedding march, Abigail placed her hand on Thomas's arm, ready to take the first step into her new life. Her parents and Sophia stood dumbfounded. "Dad, Mom," Abigail turned back. "Take your seats. This is my wedding." As the pastor's solemn voice echoed in the church, Abigail stood beside Thomas. Sunlight streaming through the church windows softly illuminated her wedding dress. She looked ahead with a slightly nervous expression, but when she felt Thomas's gaze, she smiled at him. At the back of the church, James's father was red-faced with anger. Around him, disgruntled relatives gathered, muttering complaints to each other. James, with a pale face, was trying to appease them, but to no effect. "What a disaster! I didn't even want to attend the sister of his fiancée's wedding," James's father shouted. "What were you thinking?" "Dad, lower your voice," James desperately pleaded. Somehow, another venue silence. James's father cut off his words. "I won't forget today. This concerns the honor of Marita's Pharmaceuticals." The ceremony proceeded solemnly, and Abigail and Thomas vowed their love to each other. When they exchanged rings and the pastor declared, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," applause erupted from the entire congregation. Abigail looked at Thomas with a face full of happiness. Tears streamed down her cheeks. The reception was to be held in a small hall adjacent to the church, but to Abigail's surprise, the venue was transformed beyond recognition. The hall, which was supposed to have a simple setting, was adorned with elegant white flowers and soft candlelight, creating an atmosphere like a banquet room in a luxury hotel. "Thomas, this is..." Abigail was at a loss for words, and Thomas gently squeezed her hand. "I made a few changes," he smiled. "I wanted it to be a place worthy of you." The reception began, and it was time for the toast. Thomas stood up and took his glass. The venue fell silent. Everyone, thank you for gathering on our special day, Thomas said in a calm voice. Abigail, meeting you was the greatest fortune of my life. I am deeply grateful for your kindness, intelligence, and, above all, your unwavering sincerity. Abigail looked at Thomas with loving eyes. Today is also the day to show you all my true self, Thomas continued. A small murmur spread through the venue. Abigail also tilted her head. I was introduced to Abigail as an editor at a publishing house, but in reality, Thomas paused. I am the next president of Edwards International. The venue buzzed with excitement. Edwards International was one of the largest conglomerate corporations in North America. Its assets were said to amount to billions of dollars. James's face turned pale. The largest client of Merida's Pharmaceuticals was the medical division of Edwards International. I wanted to build genuine relationships, Thomas continued quietly. I wanted to find someone who would love me for myself, not for my position or wealth. And Abigail was such a wonderful person. Tears welled up in Abigail's eyes. She had wondered why Thomas sometimes was vague about his work, but she never imagined such a secret. James's father hurriedly approached Thomas, trying to offer congratulations. Mr. Edwards, congratulations on your marriage. Our Merida's Pharmaceuticals. Thomas calmly raised his hand to stop him. Mr. Bennett, I'm sorry, but there's one more thing I want to reveal today. The venue fell silent again. Abigail looked at Thomas. His expression had a sternness she had never seen before. It's about the treatment of my wife, Abigail. Thomas's voice was quiet, but contained strong anger. I commissioned an investigation. It revealed that Sophia Carter and James Bennett deliberately planned their wedding on the same day as Abigail's to sabotage her ceremony, and they hadn't actually reserved a venue. Thomas took out a piece of paper. This is a copy of emails between Sophia and James. Abigail will definitely give in. She always does. We don't need to book a venue. No one cares about her ceremony anyway. The venue froze. All of James's relatives were looking at Sophia with accusatory eyes. Sophia was blushing intensely and hanging her head. I will have to seriously reconsider how to proceed with business with people who tried to ruin my wife's special day. Thomas's words contained an obvious warning. James's father was furious. James, what have you done? I won't allow you to marry such a woman. Dad, James stumbled over his words. This isn't what I heard, James said quietly to Sophia. You said Abigail would definitely cancel the ceremony. He began to remove his engagement ring. Sophia broke down in tears. James, please. In the silent venue, Abigail slowly stood up. Her expression was filled with sadness and determination. Today is our day of blessing, she said quietly. Let's put the past behind us. She looked at Sophia. Her sister's face was red with tears and shame, and she couldn't meet Abigail's eyes. Sophia, I don't hold a grudge against you, Abigail said. I'm just sad. We're sisters. Yet why did it come to this? Clara and Henry hung their heads in shame. Their faces showed regret. Abigail, I'm sorry, Clara said in a trembling voice. We were wrong. Sophia, unable to bear it any longer, ran from the venue. James tried to chase after her, but was grabbed by his father's arm and held back. Thomas took Abigail's hand and smiled gently. You're truly a wonderful person. This is one of the reasons I love you. Abigail looked into her husband's eyes and nodded slightly. Her heart was filled with complex emotions, but she felt that this day was the beginning of her new life. The reception continued, and the tense atmosphere gradually eased. Abigail and Thomas chatted with friends, danced their first dance, and cut the cake. Seeing their happy figures, no one doubted that this marriage was based on true love. As the night deepened, Abigail occasionally looked toward her parents. They sat in a corner seat, talking quietly. Their expressions showed obvious regret. Abigail leaned against Thomas and whispered, Do you think I can reconcile with them someday? Thomas squeezed her hand and replied, Time will heal. What's important is that you chose your own path and that we walk together." Abigail smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. Her heart felt truly free for the first time. She had gained the freedom to live her own life, no longer bound by her family's expectations or comparisons. 3 months later, Abigail and Thomas had returned from their honeymoon in France and Italy and were beginning life in their new home in the Boston suburbs. The house was an elegant mansion in an old style, with ancient oak trees lining the spacious garden. Abigail continued her work at the library while occasionally accompanying Thomas to his social events. Thomas was officially appointed as the president of Edwards International and was building his reputation in the business world. However, the center of their life was always their love and respect for each other. "Abigail, there was another call from your mother," Thomas said at the breakfast table. The morning sun shone through the kitchen window, softly illuminating their faces. Abigail took her coffee cup and sipped slowly. She had received several apologetic calls and messages from her parents, but she wasn't ready yet. The wounds were too deep. "Maybe it's time to meet them," she said quietly. The next day, Abigail decided to meet her parents at a cafe in the suburbs. Clara and Henry were already seated. Their previously arrogant attitude had subsided, and they looked visibly tired. "Abigail," Clara stood up as soon as she saw her daughter. "Thank you so much for coming." "Mother, father," Abigail greeted them quietly. "I'm truly sorry for hurting you," Clara teared up. "We spoiled Sophia too much. We didn't consider your feelings." Henry also nodded. "We were wrong. We want your forgiveness." Abigail gazed at her parents' faces. Genuine regret could be seen in their eyes. "What about Sophia?" she asked. "She's having a hard time," Clara sighed. Sophia and James's engagement was broken off. James's family thoroughly rejected her, and James himself was in a precarious position at the company and was pushing the responsibility onto Sophia. Sophia had also quit her job at the upscale boutique and was holed up in her parents' house. With the economic recession, her parents' real estate company was struggling, and it wasn't easy to support her. "Sophia says she wants to apologize," Henry said quietly. Abigail thought for a while and answered, "I need time." That night, after discussing it with Thomas, she decided, family is family. Someday, the time to forgive might come. A few weeks later, Abigail met Sophia. There was no trace of her once arrogant sister. A dejected young woman stood there. "I'm truly sorry," Sophia said in a trembling voice. "I was crazy with jealousy. You were always kind and sincere. Yet Abigail took a deep breath and suggested, "I may not be able to forgive right away, but we could try to repair our relationship little by little." Sophia nodded through her tears. Thomas continued the contract with James's company, but James himself was transferred to another department. Sophia began attending a local community college, reassessing her life. On a night when the first snow announcing winter's arrival began to fall by the window, Abigail smiled quietly in Thomas's arms. A warm fire burned in the fireplace of their new home, and pictures from their wedding adorned the walls. "Any regrets?" Thomas asked gently, kissing her hair. Abigail shook her head. "Not for a moment. Meeting you gave me the courage to live as my true self." They continued their marriage, built on love and sincerity, quietly but with deep happiness. And Abigail realized, day by day, that there are no wounds that time cannot heal.